All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. If you're on a laptop, desktop computer, it's going to be to the right of the video. If you are on a mobile device, it's going to be below the video, or at least it should be, something like that. All right, so I always start with questions that were asked up to an hour before the office hour started. So questions that were asked 2 p.m. and after Eastern time. So if you were on here and you posted a question at earlier this morning, go ahead and just repost your question, and then we'll answer it. If not, you just won't get your question answered, basically. So the reason why I do that is I just want to make sure that I'm answering questions for people who I think are here waiting to see their question get answered. We send out an email. If you're signed up for your reminders, we send out an email an hour before. And typically what happens is people get the reminder, then they come in here and start asking questions and waiting for the office hours to start. So that's why I do it that way. If you'd like to get the office hours, that's telling me that I'm reconnecting. So hopefully that doesn't do this the whole time. It hasn't done it for all week, and now it's starting to do that. So hopefully it doesn't do that the whole time. But if you'd like to get reminders, just go to the office hours tab at the top there, select that, then select, I think it says customize office hours reminders, and then just select the days that you want to get emails, and then you'll get reminded. So like I said, we'll start here with Greg T. He says, I have lifted weights for the last 30 years and pretty bulked up. I believe because of this, I start my downswing by lifting my arms and coming out of posture. How do I fix this, and would shortening my backswing help? I would have to see your swing to see what's going on there. I think that there's partially a reason why you don't see like guys like The Rock playing golf and stuff like that, because when you bulk up, a lot of times it can remove a little bit of your flexibility, so it can make it difficult for you to do that. So what you may have trouble lifting up your arms, which it may make you kind of go like this a little bit. So basically you want to get your arms up as much as you can without coming out of your posture. So I would look at your spine angle and make sure that you're not going like this. You want to stay like this. If this is all the further you can lift up your arms without going like this, then that's all you should really go, because it's going to be difficult for you. If you're going like this at the top, it's going to be difficult to get into a good position at impact. So that's what it sounds like, what is going on. So that's what I would look at. Work through the stable fluid spine course, shorten, don't try to just keep your spine angle from going like this, and just get your arms as much as you can from there, and you should be in good shape. All right, so Mitchell G says, hi, Q. In Clay's video, the move, when he talks about shallowing the club, he moved his hands vertically downward while turning the doorknob, but he doesn't really speak about it. Is that what that means by shallowing? Is the swing thought following that to move the butt end of the club towards the ball until the release? So basically, what shallowing means is it just means getting the club back on plane, or even a little bit below the plane. That's all that shallowing means. So if when we go up to the top of the swing, if you imagine the club plane would basically be from the hosel of the club up through my elbow. Okay. So when I go up to the top of the swing, right, that club plane is like right here. When I go up to the top of the swing, my club is above that club plane. So I have to shallow it, which means going this way. This would be steepening, right? This would be shallowing, right? So I need to shallow the club to get it back on plane. And now once I have it on plane, now I can turn through the golf ball. I don't have to make any compensations to get it on plane. What I see a lot of people do is they start coming down like this. They have the club steep. And now that this plane is right here, but this club's up here. If I continue in this fashion, I'm going to put that club into the ground behind the golf ball, or I'm going to end up kind of swinging over the top, maybe hanging back, swinging over the top. It's not going to lead to any good issues. So what most people do is they'll kind of stand up And now that club gets back on plane or even underneath plane or closer to plane anyway. And now they can hit a functional golf shot. The problem is that functional golf shot requires a lot of timing. It requires basically your ground contact has to be perfect. You're going to have to pick the ball to hit it decent. You're going to hit a lot of thin shots. It's just going to be more difficult to play good. So what you want to do is you want to shallow out that club as you're coming down. Now, you don't want the hands to be going out here, and you don't want the hands getting too far behind you, because if the hands get too far behind you back here, your trail arm has nowhere to go. It has to steepen the club, and then you're back to where you were. So basically, you just want to get this club. You want to focus on what this club is doing. The golf ball doesn't care what your elbow does or it doesn't care. It only cares about how this golf club is presented to it at impact. So we want to get this club in a position to be able to do that. And that's going to require shallowing out, or to do it the most efficient way, to do it the way that we see tour players doing it. We want to be getting this club shallowed out, getting the hands to be working down like this, getting the club to be shallowed out, and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to be creating lag, yes, you want to be having that butt end of the club working out away from the golf ball and then turning back into your body. That's what we talk about in the top speed lag course. So if you see yourself in this kind of position, right, where you're casting the club right away, you may want to work on getting some lag here in the start of the swing, getting that butt end of the club to be pointing out away from your chest here, and then turning back into your chest as quickly as possible in that straight line release. So hopefully that helps you to understand exactly what's going on here. Is we want to get the club shallowing out. Shallowing out just means getting it on plane, because it's usually in a steep position at the top, and then we want to get it. We want to get it on plane. A lot of times I see people, they get it in a shallow position at the top, and that's fine. You can do that, but you have to keep it there. You've got to keep it in that shallow position. So a big mistake that I often see people make is they try to shallow the club in the backswing, and then what happens in the downswing is they steepen it up in the downswing initially, and that's going to lead to issues, because now we're here. How are we going to get it back shallow? So we're going shallow, steep, shallow, right? That's going to be difficult. You're going to be taking a lot of energy out of this club. It'd be much better to go steep, shallow, and steep in the backswing, and then shallow in the downswing. That's what you see most tour players doing. All right. So Rick B says, with the move in mind, I know that you should shallow. Should you also shallow the wedges? That said, we close the face up in woods, but do your close with the driver. If not, I'm having a problem with squaring driver. Can you show me an example of how to? You're doing the move with all clubs. Let's explain exactly what the move is. The move is getting the club on plane as soon as possible, and getting the club square as soon as possible. Right? That's all we're trying to do. Once you get the club shallow and square, from there, you don't have to make any compensations later in the golf swing to be able to do that. This is what all the best players do. The best players shallow the club early in the downswing, and they square the face early in the downswing. That way, later on, they don't have to make any compensation. So if I have this face open as I'm coming down, right, now I have to get this face closed somehow. And what a lot of people do is they'll release that club early. Releasing the club early is a means to close the face. Or a lot of times they'll have this face open coming down, and they won't be able to close the face, right? The face will just kind of they'll try their hardest to really roll the hands over and close the face, but they just can't do it. And the face is open, and you end up with big slices. So if we can get this face squaring up sooner, that's going to allow us to get to not have to make any compensation. I can just rotate through contact and rotate hard, and I know that face is going to be square every single time. Same thing with shallowing the club. I want to get this club on plane as soon as possible. That's basically what shallowing means. Shallowing is not this. Like, this is shallowing, but that's not what we're going for. We're not. If I get the club too shallow, you can overdo it. And now what do I have to do from here? I have to make some sort of compensation to get to the golf ball, right? I'm going to have to steepen it later. And I see that every now and then. It's pretty rare. If I get somebody who's kind of got the wrong idea about shallowing, and they're coming down and they've got the club like this, every now and then I end up with someone like that. I guess Swinger View student who's doing that, and it's really just it's pretty simple to get them back to where they want to be. But that's basically all shallowing is, just getting the club on plane. Now, in the move course, we try to get you to overdo it because most people are coming down steep initially, open face, and we're trying to get you to overdo it, over shallow it, over square the face, basically close the face, and hit some other hooks. And then at the end of the move course, you tone that down to where it's a nice draw, right? So you're doing this with all the clubs, whether it's a driver, whether it's a wedge, whether it's a pitch shot. Every shot that you hit, you want to, in the downswing, in the start of the downswing, you want to get that face or you want to get that club on plane as soon as you can, and that face square as soon as you can. So in a pitch shot, it probably just doesn't feel like you're doing the move because it becomes very natural, right? And if I'm hitting a little pitch shot, if I bring it right here, my face is not, maybe some people with pitch shots do this, really open the face. And maybe a lot of some people with pitch shots, they kind of go like this, right? That where they open the face, maybe they bring the club out here. Well, this person would really have to feel like they're doing the move. They would have to feel like they're going like this. They're shallowing out the club, getting that face square. They're really having to feel that. But a lot of people with a little pitch shot, automatically, they just bring the club back like this, right? So the face is square and the club is already shallowed out. So from there, I can just swing down and through. Now, some people I see when they hit pitch shots, they bring it here, and then they kind of come over the top with their pitch shot. Well, that person would definitely need to come here and shallow the club out to get it to work from the inside a little bit, right? They're coming down steep. They need to shallow that up. With a driver, same thing. With the driver, I need to go up to the top of the swing. I need to shallow that driver. I need to get it on plane as soon as possible, and then I need to get that driver squaring up so I can turn through the ball and rip it. It's all the same. It's if we understand what the move is, we can understand that we have to do it with all clubs. With putting, right? It just doesn't feel like you're doing it with putting because when you bring the putter back, it should already basically be square, right? So you don't need to manipulate it to square it, right? So I think that's where a lot of people get off with things. They think, well, am I doing the move with this? Am I doing the move with this? It's like, well, you are, but you probably are already doing it. You just don't feel like you need to do anything different to make it happen, right? So a tour player, who's already doing it'd be like a tour player who's already doing the move. A tour player who's already getting this club on plane soon and getting the face square as soon as possible. So like Dustin Johnson, for example. He's at the top of the swing. That face is square already. It's actually closed. The face is closed, and as he's starting the downswing, that club is shallowing out. Like it wouldn't do him any good. Like if I told him, "Hey, do the move," like it's not going to do him a good to shallow it more and close it more. He's already doing it. So it's kind of the same thing. If I tell you to do the move with your putting stroke, you probably don't need to do it. You're already that putter is already probably in a good spot, right? You're probably not way off with it. You're already there. So that's basically what it comes down to. You're doing these with all the clubs. Now, by nature, longer clubs are going to be more difficult. Just by nature, they're longer. They're harder to control. They have less loft. If you're off a little bit, it's going to. This is why it's much more difficult to. Wedges are harder for some reasons. And with a driver, it's a harder club to hit because it's longer. It has less loft. Like I said, you can hit it offline. A wedge, it's much harder to slice a wedge, right? Because it's putting more backspin on the ball. But in some senses, wedges can be harder to hit because there is a lot more loft, right? And when there's a lot more loft, that means that if you blade it or something, it's going to make a bigger difference. If you blade a 7-iron, it's not going to be that. It's going to go a little bit lower. It's going to have a little bit more spin. But as far as the distance goes, it's probably not going to be that much different. If you blade a 56-degree wedge, it's going to go 40 yards further than what you intended, probably. So that in that sense, it can be more difficult because there's ground contact involved with the driver, but it's also shorter, so it's easier to control. So there's give and take there, but like I said, by nature, typically those clubs are going to be harder to shallow out because they're longer, and they're going to be harder to because you're going to have a harder time wanting to change what you're trying to do because of the consequences of doing that. So that's why you just have to work through these things on the range. It's not going to be super easy. It's just something you have to work through. It takes time and reps to do that, but it's no different. You're not doing anything different as far as the move is concerned with the driver than you are with any other club. With all of them, you're all trying to get the club on plane and square as soon as possible in the downswing. So Ed says, thanks, Q. Have a great evening. Thanks, Ed. You too. Sorry, my question got garbled. Old message. No worries. All right, so Ed D goes on to say, concentrating on left shoulder moving down and takeaway solve the distance problem I mentioned the other day. Back to same distance, maybe a bit more with impact drill. Question is, drills videos to work on proper timing of parts, straightening, releasing through ball, left leg, right leg, wrist angles, and extension to target. So that's all in the Top Speed Golf system. All of that. Everything that you're talking about is in the Top Speed Golf system. So just continue to work through the Top Speed Golf system, and it'll get hit on all. You'll hit on all those pieces. You'll hit on how to release with the legs. You'll hit on the wrist angles, especially with lag and so on and so forth. So Top Speed Golf system and the move, it's all going to hit those areas that you're talking about. You're not going to be able to work on every single one of them at the same time. You can't think about 8 different things at once, right? So you got to kind of work on one piece, get the reps in with that, get comfortable. So the shoulder turn, for example, you're talking about that. You're going to need to work on that to make that second nature before you move on to another piece. Otherwise, if you start concentrating on, let's say, your left leg and what your left leg is doing, then you're going to lose that shoulder turn. You're going to stop doing it because it's not second nature. It's not automatic to you. So I would recommend keep working on the shoulder turn pieces, get to where that's second nature. And then once you get comfortable with that, then start working on the other pieces. So Lone T says, is there more of a shaft forward on the irons than with the driver? The angle is a little bit more sharp on iron swings. Yes. So there will typically be more forward shaft lean for your shorter clubs versus your longer clubs. That's mostly basically dictated by your ball position. So with a wedge, right? With a wedge at impact, I have a wedge in my hand. Let me grab a ball. So I have a wedge in my hand here. I play my wedge about in the middle of my stance for a full swing, right? At impact, I want to be about right here in this area right here. So you can see my forward shaft lean here. Now with a driver, I have a little bit wider of a stance and the ball is more forward. Now if I grab the driver here, you can see, I can't use the full length of it, but basically my impact's going to be more like this. So you can see I'm pretty much straight up and down here. There might be 1 degree of a forward shaft lean here, but look at my hands. My hands are basically in the same position, right? My body is basically in the same position. Everything's basically in the same position. It's just that because instead of the ball being right here, it's right here. So it looks like there's less forward shaft lean here, but you're really not doing anything different as far as coming through the golf ball. It's just that with the shots you're hitting off the ground, the ball's back here, so your hands will be more forward. And with a driver, the ball's up here, so your hands are in the same place, but the ball is more forward, so it appears that there's less forward shaft lean there. I mean, technically there is less forward shaft lean because of the ball placement. So Bo B says, to David F, is a black or red also how much? Thanks. Is a black or red? I'm not sure what he's talking about. David F. Let's see. I don't know if we've had any questions from David F. Okay, so he's responding to, I have a new PRGR. What I will sell if you want it. Okay. So don't put any personal information on here, folks. I think if this is the David F that I'm thinking of, he contacted me asking me if I knew anybody who wanted a PRGR. David, if you're on here, like I said, I don't recommend using this forum to sell anything. Please do not put any personal information on here. Otherwise, I will delete it for your own safety. Please use like eBay or something like that to sell things. There's no, you don't have any protection from us. So I'm sure David and Bo are stand-up guys, and it would be a fine transaction. But if for some reason it wasn't, we don't have any way to protect buyers or sellers of things. So please don't use our this is not intended to sell things. So if you don't mind, take that to somewhere else, like eBay. I'm not affiliated with eBay or in any way, but eBay or sites like eBay where you can buy and sell things, they protect you and they protect buyers and sellers if something goes wrong. And that's what I would recommend using. So Jason P says, I open my shoulder too fast on the downswing. When I do practice swings, I can do it right. However, once I put the ball there, it all goes wrong. So here's the thing about practice swings versus swings with the golf ball. When you have practice swings, there's no golf ball there. So there's no, you don't have to square up the face. You don't have to, usually you're going a lot slower. Usually the face isn't square. If a golf ball was there during your practice swing, a lot of times you would completely miss it. So you do things in your swing with the golf ball in order to hit it, right? In order to hit it straight, hit it with speed and things like that. But when it's a practice swing, there isn't anything there. So what I'd recommend doing is try to exaggerate as much as possible in your practice swing. And then when you go to the swing with the golf ball, try to do the move by any means necessary. And what that means is don't be afraid of the consequence of a bad shot. So this isn't something you're going to go out and you do a couple practice swings, then you go out in the course and it's going to be perfect. It doesn't work that way I wish it worked that way. I wish you could just do a practice swing and then just nail it perfectly with the golf ball. But the brain doesn't work that way. Your brain has built patterns for your body to move, because when you move fast with things, your body builds a pattern to how to do it, right? And if you change that pattern, you don't know how to coordinate that with hitting a golf ball yet. So you have to work through it first. So you have to get the position, even if it means that you miss the golf ball. If you miss then you have to make an adjustment. So let's say you do the move, right? Or not the move, but let's say you're working on, maybe you're coming down, and I'm guessing you're just coming out of your posture. It sounds like your left shoulder's kind of flying open like that. Let's say your lead shoulder kind of going down and staying in your posture. That's what it sounds like to me. So what you need to do is do that by any means necessary. Get the really focus with the golf ball there, because when you're working on a movement, the having success is not whether you hit the golf ball good. Having success is whether you successfully performed the movement or not. So that's what you have to kind of, it's hard to do. I'm telling you, it's hard to do. We're programmed, our bodies are programmed to want to hit the golf ball good. So when you change a movement pattern, a lot of times it will get worse before it gets better. So that's what you have to do, is you have to force yourself to do it. And let's say I did it, right? I performed the movement. I got it where I wanted to, but I chunked it, right? So on the next one, I'm going to think, okay, well, I want to perform the movement again, but I want to hit the ball flush this time. So instead of chunking it, I'm going to feel like either I'm hitting the ground more in front of the golf ball, or I'm going to feel like I'm getting my weight shift, just doing something else along with it that's going to keep you from chunking it. And then maybe on the next one, you perform the movement correctly. You don't chunk it, but you hit it off the hosel. Well, on the next one, you have to add another piece, right? You have to perform the movement, get your weight shift forward, and then hit the ball off the toe. So that's how you have to work through it. You have to perform the movement by any means necessary, even if it means hitting the worst shot you've ever hit in your life. That's not what the success is. That's not what you can measure success. You have to measure success whether you are performing the movement or not. it doesn't matter so much in the beginning, especially what the golf ball is doing. Get the movement down, find the tendency of what's going on, and then try to fix that tendency as you're performing the movement. That's how you work through things. There's some things that you can do that are going to be instantly going to lead to better contact. But that's not, most things aren't going to work that way. It just depends on what you're working on. That particular piece, you're working on your shoulder being in a completely different position. That changes a lot of things. That's going to change a lot of things. So you have to, typically with any change in your swing, there's going to be a yin and a yang to what you're doing, right? If you change something else, that's going to make something else a little bit worse because you're matching things up. So basically, if you're someone who's standing up and the left shoulder's moving out, then you're someone who most likely early releases the club, flips the club, and things like that. Well, now if I get my shoulder down, if I early release the club, I'm going to be into the ground, right? So now I'm getting my shoulder down, and I have to release this club out in front so that I don't hit the ground. Well, what probably happens now is if I'm an early releaser of the club, the way that I square the face is by the early release and flipping through. So maybe I release later now. I have my shoulder down. I'm releasing later now, but now the face is wide open, right? Because I'm not releasing to square up the face. So now I have to figure out, okay, I'm getting my shoulder down. I'm not hitting the ground. Now I've got to turn this handle down to square the face. I have to find a different way to square the face. So you have to match things up. That's how a lot of things work. If you're working on a slice, for example, if you slice and you come over the top, your ground contact's going to move more forward, right? So a lot of times you hang back, you swing over the top, and you slice it. Well, if I hang back and swing from the inside, right? Well, now I'm going to be hitting the ground back here. So now I've got to get my weight shift forward, swing from the inside. Well, now maybe my face is open. So now I have to turn the handle, right? So now I got to get my weight shift forward, swing from the inside and close the face. And now I have a draw, right? Or maybe, maybe you hit it off the heel now. So now you have to add that. It's constantly tweaking what you're doing to get back to where you have to keep matching things up. All right. So that's that. I know it sounds like it's a really tough process, and it can be really tough, but that's what it takes to kind of go through and make a change like that. So Roger B says, my original swing speed was around 95 miles per hour, and my high practice swing was about 101. After 3 weeks working at it consistently, swing 105 and got my high of 109 just last night. That's awesome. But that's without a ball. As soon as I practice with a ball, the best I get is 96 miles per hour. Not sure how to get past this. Keep doing the same things that you were doing before. I don't necessarily recommend doing swing speed training without a golf ball. I usually recommend doing it with a golf ball if at all possible. Typically, your swing speed is going to be different. I haven't seen too many people whose swing speed is the same with and without the golf ball. Now, I don't know why this is. I need to look into this more, but some people swing faster with a golf ball, and some people swing faster without a golf ball. I think most people are in the category of swinging faster without a golf ball. Personally, I don't know why, and I've seen this in a few other people. I swing faster with a golf ball. My club head speed is faster when there's a golf ball there. I think most people, like I said, is the other way around. So I would expect it to be different with and without a golf ball. And that's why I'd be doing most of your speed training with a golf ball, if at all possible. Because that's really the true measure of your club head speed, right? It doesn't do you a lot of good to be able to swing 100. Now, it's probably helping you, but I wouldn't expect to swing the same with and without. So I would be trying to do as much speed training as you can with the golf ball, and be doing the same thing. But don't expect it to be the same with and without. It's going to most likely be different, and usually it's going to be more without the golf ball. But just keep doing the same thing. You're on the right track. Sounds like you've been able to get it to go up, but it's just a matter of continuing doing the speed training with the golf ball there. All right, so let's keep moving through here. All right, so we got Cy C says, in the move, in addition to shallowing the shaft, we turn the shaft to close the face. My question is, wouldn't it be easier to close the face at setup? Then in the entire swing, the face will be closed. Now in the downswing, I only then have to shallow the shaft since the face is already closed. Yes and no. Theoretically, yeah, that would be really easy. I'm just going to really close the face right here, right? And I'm just going to bring the club back. I'm just going to keep it closed the entire time. In reality, that's not easy. That's not easy to do. In fact, I've tried doing it. I have some students that are able to do it. There's some players that are able to do it. It's like a Dustin Johnson, for example. He doesn't have the face closed at address, but as he brings this club up to the top, he's got it like this at the top. If you look at John Rahm, same way. Colin Morikawa, very similar. Brooks Koepka, very similar. Not as extreme. Daniel Berger, very similar, right? A lot of them have this position at the top. Well, you can do that, but you have to keep it in the downswing. You have to keep this coming down in the downswing. You can't. What I see a lot of people do, a lot of my students, a big mistake that I see a lot of students make when they're trying to do that is that they do this when they bring it up to the top, and then when they come down, they go like this. So to zoom in on that, they're like this at the top. They're doing the DJ wrist move, right? And then when they come down, they open it. So they really cup the wrist. Well, they're just undoing everything that they just did. They just opened the face. So yes, you can do exactly what you're saying, but you have to keep it closed. It's most important to have it where it's closed as you're coming down into the golf ball. So you just have to keep it that way the whole time. You can keep it closed throughout the backswing and then keep it closed throughout the downswing. That's completely fine. But I found that it's easiest to basically have it to where you're basically flat or slightly bowed at the top. That's a pretty neutral club face. And then in the downswing, you start to close it. You start to get it to where it's closing initially in the downswing. I find that that's the easiest for most, but you may find it easier to close it in the backswing and then in the downswing. Now, as far as the shallowing is concerned, I really don't. This is another big mistake that I often see is that people try to shallow the club in the backswing. When you shallow the club in the backswing, that usually leads to a steep downswing. So if you imagine, if I go like this and I shallow the club like this, I'm usually, because of the position of my arm and everything else, that's usually going to lead to steep downswing. Now, there are some players, like a Ricky Fowler, for example. He kind of brings the club back like this, very, very shallow, super laid off. And then he actually steepens it a little bit in the downswing, but it's on plane. It's where it needs to be, right? He goes from shallow to slightly steep, but the club is still on plane. Very unorthodox. There's not a lot of people swings that look like Ricky. He kind of does it his own way, right? But that's a completely fine way to do it. Not a way I would really teach, but Ricky's been doing that for a long time, and that's what works well for him. If you look at Daniel Berger is kind of the same way. He brings the club up here. He's like this, and then he actually shallows it even more when he's coming down. Again, unorthodox, works really well for Daniel Berger, but probably wouldn't work very well for most people. Then you see kind of the other end of the spectrum. You see like a Matt Wolff who goes very steep in the backswing. So he's got this club working way, way, way steep like this. He's like this at the top. That actually, the way this shaft is in the direction the forces are going, that's going to be looking his elbows out away from his body. That makes it so much easier in the downswing to get this motion, right? So much easier. Jim Furyk, basically the same way, right? Basically going up like that and then getting it to come from the inside. So those are easier ways to do it. It's going to feel pretty loopy to a lot of people. What you see with most tour players, though, is they get the club up here. If you look at like a Tiger and Adam Scott, the swings that you look at and you're like, that is a great golf swing. Those kinds of swings, right? The better looking aesthetically swings. Those are the ones that go up to the top like this. Flat, maybe slightly bowed lead wrist. You get some slight bowing and some slight shallowing here. And the start of the downswing, you're right here. And they're in a great position. There's less moving around and things like that. So you just have to find the way that works best for you. But that's really what it comes down to is getting the club You got to get the club shallowing out. And what the best players do is that the thing that's in common with all those people that I mentioned, whether it's Ricky Fowler, whether it's Daniel Berger, Jon Rahm, Dustin Johnson, Tiger Woods, Adam Scott, Jim Furyk, Matt Wolff, and all those guys, they all bring it up in very different ways, right? Very, very different backswings. But if you look at all of them to this point in the swing where the lead arm is parallel to the ground, you're going to see a lot of similarities. You're going to see that they're all going to look, they all basically get to that same position right here. And that's what it's all about, getting that club where it's shallow about in this area, getting that club where it's square in this area. And whether you bring it back where it's closed the whole time and then you keep that the same way in the downswing, that's fine. Or whether you bring it back shallow and then bring it here, or steep, bring it here, or somewhere in between there, as long as you're in that position right there when you're coming down with this club shallow and this face is squaring up early, then you're going to be in good shape. You're going to be in a great position to be a good ball striker. All right, so next question here is from Boyce C. Boyce L. Sorry, Boyce L says, right-handed golfer, is there a left side bend when making the backswing to get the left shoulder down? Yes. So there's left side bend in the backswing and then right side bend in the downswing for a right-handed golfer. So for those of you who aren't familiar with side bend is, basically if I stand here with my hips level and I try to move my right shoulder down to my hip like that, I'm kind of crunching into my side here. That would be right side bend. And if I go like this opposite way, hips level, I kind of move my shoulder down to my hip, closer to my hip, that's going to be left side bend. So this is happening in the backswing, and then this is happening in the downswing. So if you watch here, as I go up to the top, I'm getting left side bend here as I'm going up to the top, right? And then as I come down in the downswing, I'm getting right side bend, right? So yes, absolutely. So Sai C says in the move. So I don't know if this is the same question. Yeah, so it was the same question as before from Philip. So let's move on from Sai. So Philip W says, Q, what are the signs of ball flight if you start, and get your hands too far away from your body? What are the signs of ball flight if you start and get your hands too far away from your body? Philip, you want to ask your question in a different way? I don't know exactly what you're asking. What are the signs of ball flight if you start and get your hands too far away from your body? So if your hands are too far away from your body, so maybe you're talking about early extension a little bit. So if you have early extension, typically you're going to hit the ball thin. And you're typically going to add loft. So ball's probably going to go high, and unless you hit it thin, if you hit it thin, it can go lower, because what happens when you hit it thin, the face will actually twist down a little bit, which closes or which de-lofts the face. So if you hit it thin, it may actually be lower, but it may start out lower, but then balloon up, because when you hit it thin, it adds spin, especially if you're hitting into the wind. If you hit a thin one, it'll kind of balloon up. But typically high ball flight from early extension, because when you early extend, you stand up and your head's getting away from the body, right? The hands are getting higher and away from the body. And when you do that, you have to flip to get to the golf club, and that adds loft. So high ball flight is typically going to be, not compressed shots. It's typically going to be what you find. So Mitchell G says the PRGR is not accurate without a ball. Can you gauge increases in decreases? So quick tip here with the PRGR and what they've told us. I typically don't do any speed training without a golf ball, but if you are doing some, maybe you got a setup where you just can't hit a golf ball. It's way better to do it without a golf ball than not doing it at all. But if you can do it with a golf ball, I'd absolutely recommend that you do. I just think you're going to get a lot more out of it. And plus, it's way more fun to hit. I don't know about you guys, but I love hitting a golf ball as hard as I possibly can. I think that's very fun. So I have way more fun doing that than just swinging through midair, as hard as I can, because I like to see, the joy that comes with when you are swinging as hard as you can and you catch one, like you flush one, you hit it in the middle of the face, and to see that ball, the sound of it and the ball, the way that it takes off and everything, you know that it might be the longest drive that you've ever hit. That just brings a lot of joy to me. So that's why I like training with a golf ball. But the PRGR, what they told us, when you're swinging without a golf ball, move it a little bit closer. So typically with a golf ball, you're about a club length away, a driver club length. I think it says like 4 feet. Typically end to end, that's about what a driver is. So if you use a driver club length for with the golf ball, but they told us to move it to like 3 feet. So I would move it, just inside your putter, basically, or not putter, inside your grip. That would be roughly about 3 feet, just inside the grip. That's where I try to do that and see if but that could be part of the issue as well, is that may be off because of the position of the PRGR. So I just position it a little bit closer, and you may get more similar numbers. But typically it is going to be different. Like I said, it is going to be usually different with and without a golf ball. It could go either way. For me, I swing faster with a golf ball for some reason, and Clay swings faster without. All right, so Drew D says, Clay, or Q, excuse me, does the release just occur naturally, or do you have to time it in some way, like when your arm is parallel to the ground? So this question, it's really relative, right? So if you look at your swing and you're not doing it, and you're doing what feels natural to you, and you're not releasing the club properly where it should be, then it's not to get it to release where you want it to. It's not going to be natural initially. But if you do it enough, the goal is to get to where it's natural. That's what you want. You want to get to where it's natural, but you have to train yourself to do it. So if you think about, when you started playing golf, right, it was probably completely unnatural, right? But eventually you got to where it started to feel more natural. The grip, for example, it probably felt super unnatural, especially if you played baseball. Like, so if I played baseball growing up, I played baseball before I played any golf. And when you grip a baseball bat, it's like this, right? So you have you don't put your thumbs down it. You hold it like this. This is how you hold a baseball. So, or a baseball bat. That's how, when I started playing golf, that's how I wanted to grip the club, right? And then my dad made me, put my thumb down there and interlock my fingers and all that. I tell you what, that did not feel natural at all. That felt very unnatural, But eventually, I gripped the club that way so many times. When I did it initially, I had to think, okay, where and your fingers you're not gripping it the same way either in the hands. So like you're gripping it a little bit more in the palm and in the fingers in a golf grip. So I had to think, okay, I'm putting it on there. My thumb has to go down, and okay, I have to put my ring and my pinky finger, or my pointer and my pinky finger together, interlock those, and then I have to put this hand on top of that one. And it felt really awkward and weird at first, and I had to think it through it every single time. But eventually, like now, or I don't even remember how long it took, but eventually I just got to where I just grab the club and I don't even think about it. I just do it. I just grab it in that same way every single time. And that's what it's going to come down to. If you're releasing the club, if you look on camera and you're releasing the club like this, and that's what feels natural to you, it's going to take a lot of time and repetitions for you to release it out here for that to feel comfortable for you. That's the goal, for it to feel natural, but it's just going to take some time. That's why in basically in the Top Speed Golf system, we're asking you to do on all these tests 3,000 reps. Those 3,000 reps, that's about how much time it takes, or what we found is it takes for somebody to get comfortable with something, to start getting comfortable with something. It takes that much time. So, or that much time and repetition. If you're doing the reps properly and you're putting in the time and the effort, that's usually about how long it takes. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's really what it comes down to, is it's natural. It's natural if it's natural. And if you look on video and you're doing what you want to do and that's natural, then you're in good shape. But if you're not, then it's going to feel unnatural for a while, just like anything else that you've ever learned how to do. Now, this is not going to be as easy as learning how to grip the club. But a funny story about that is I played in a softball league several years ago, and I went to grab the softball bat. I hadn't swung a bat in who knows how long, probably since college. And when I went to grab the bat, I gripped it like a golf club. And I had to tell myself, okay, stop gripping it like a golf club, because that's how I thought I needed to grip something. And it wouldn't, I needed to get myself to actually grip it like this. And that actually felt weird. Like, this feels weird gripping this like this, but that felt like the most natural thing when I started playing golf, is to grip it just like this, like a baseball bat. So you just have to train yourself. It just takes time. So Charles V says, do you keep the hands ahead of the ball with the driver? So like we talked about earlier, the hands are going to be a slightly ahead of the golf ball typically, but not as much. And that's just by virtue of the ball placement. So ball placement's more forward with the driver, more toward the middle of the stance for shots that you're hitting off the turf. So like your wedges and your irons and stuff like that. So here would be like a normal iron shot, and then here would be like a driver. You can see my hands aren't very far ahead of it. Typically, I think the average on tour is like 1 degree of shaft lean with a driver. So it's very, very little. But the hands are basically in the same place. It's just the ball that's moving. All right, so Graham C says, hi Q, do you have any tips for someone with limited head and neck movement to achieve a full shoulder turn and staying in posture? Thanks, Graham. I would maybe try to look into getting some to getting that, because otherwise, one thing you can do is you can turn your head initially. So if you look at old videos, like a Jack Nicklaus, he would actually, especially with his driver, he would, for a club that he was trying to get a big full shoulder turn with, which is driver, he tried to hit his driver as far as he could. So he would turn his head like this, right, and then take his turn. So if you're having some limited mobility there, that could help. So that'd be one thing I would try. With all your shots, kind of try to look at the ball, I guess, with your left eye, turn your head away, and that way you're not here and you're trying to turn, because your head's probably going to turn with it. So that way you can be here and you can just turn your shoulder where it needs to be. So that's something you could try. The other thing I would try is just trying to get a little bit more mobility in your neck. So I would maybe like a physical therapist or something like that can help you to get more mobility in your neck. So check locally, if there's somebody that you can go to for that would definitely be something. Otherwise, you don't want to turn and lose sight of the golf ball. That's going to make it difficult to lock back onto it, because that's about the only other way you can do it, is kind of go up here, lose sight of the golf ball, and then turn down and then try to lock back onto the golf ball. And you're going to kind of lose your equilibrium a little bit too when you do that, if you're looking around all over the place, because initially you'll be looking at the ball and then you'll be looking away because you can't see it, and then because your equilibrium will change a little bit. It's going to make it more difficult. So I would try turning the head and see if that helps, or maybe contacting someone locally, physical therapist, that can maybe help you to get some mobility in your neck, so that way you can turn your shoulders and you won't have to turn your head, or even you can do a combination of both, but that way you can turn your shoulders fully and not have to make any compromises there. Because otherwise you just have to swing shorter. Like if it just comes down to it, this doesn't help, and you don't want to go to somebody to get some help with your neck or something like that. It just comes down to getting a shorter turn is basically what it comes down to, which wouldn't be ideal, but I mean, it's better than nothing, right? So David F says, yes, I got the messenger note. Sorry for the inconvenience. No worries, David. Yeah, just don't want to get anybody, in trouble or anything. So Ryan O says, my most common miss is a pull hook with topspin. It's something I can anticipate is going to happen at the top of my backswing, start of the downswing, but I'm not sure what part of the setup takeaway is causing it. So basically a pull hook is caused by an over-the-top closed face. So I'd be working on trying to swing way more into out. Not necessarily a setup issue unless you're just setting up with your body really open and coming over the top like that. I would try maybe closing off your stance a little bit swinging more into out with an open face. The best way to fix any issue is to exaggerate the opposite. So the opposite of a pull hook is a push slice. So I would try to swing out to the right with an open face. You know, if you're a right-handed golfer, I assume, out to the right, open face, try to hit a big old push slice as much as you possibly can, and that should help to get that straightened out. So Philip W says, at setup, the hands get too far away. So here's an easy way to kind of get in a proper setup. And again, this is just kind of a generality. This is not something you have to do. You're going to see all kinds of players, like Bryson, for example. Bryson stands he has his arms kind of out like this. You know, he stands further away than most people do. Kind of has his arms completely outstretched, straight out in front of him. Jim Furyk is like this, basically. Jon Rahm, very similar as well. Jon Rahm's got that, I mean, he's got his hands in his lap, right? All those guys have won a ton of money, right? A ton of money on tour. I mean, I would gladly trade bank accounts with any of those guys. So this is just a generality. It doesn't mean that you have to do this way to play golf, but it's just in general what you're going to see. So the easiest way to do this is just to kind of get a little bit of flex in the knees, a little bend at the hips. And as you let your arms kind of hang down, and as you're bending from the hips, let your arms and your hands get about 4 or 5 inches away from your thighs. So as soon as they get about 4 or 5 inches away from your thighs, stop. Once you get right there. So here you can see my hands are just hanging down with gravity, and they're about 4 or 5 inches away from my thighs. I don't want to keep going, all right? I'm not going to keep going. As soon as so a little flex in the knees, and then I'm kind of pushing my hips. I'm hinging at the hips. I'm letting my arms kind of hang straight down. 4 or 5 inches, boom. That's where I want to be. Right there. As soon as I get there, that's where I want to be. This is a pretty darn good, solid setup right here. Now, it doesn't mean, like I said, it doesn't mean you can't be like this, and it doesn't mean you can't be like this. It just means that, in general, this is a pretty good place to be. So if you can kind of go through that and get a sense and feel for, okay, this is a good spot to be, then that'll be a good starting point. All right, so Brock P says, I'm traditionally a handle lifter at impact. I'm working on lowering my hands at impact to create better compression. The thing I found is that focusing on opening the left hip creates more space for my hands at impact. However, occasionally catch myself sliding forward with my left hip rather than rotating the left hip back. Any thoughts on preventing that forward slide? Yeah, keep pushing into the ground. So if you're sliding, that means you're not pushing into the ground. So as soon as you get this, or it could be that you're getting your, you're not flexing your leg, and then you're getting this leg angle kind of like this. And then from there, you can't really rotate back. So what I would try to feel like is as you're starting down, is that you're getting some flex in these legs, and that lead leg is kind of angling out. So see how my knee is kind of pointing out like this? Now from here, my leg is at an angle that's going to allow me to push my hip out of the way. Whereas if I don't get any flex in my legs are pretty straight, and then I try to get my weight shift forward, I can't, no matter what I do, I can't really push my hip back, right? Because I've lost all the flex in my leg, and my leg is not at an angle that's going to help me to push it back, rotate it back that way. It's just going to help me to kind of go up or that way. So I want to get, as I'm starting my downswing, I want to get here, right? I want to get my leg, my knee out there like this, get my knee pointing out with some flex in there. So that way, when I push into the ground, I can push and rotate the hip back. Now, what I do see with some people, when they do this, they'll get this down, but then they'll still slide. Well, they're sliding because they're not pushing into the ground. They're just sliding. So you got to make sure you have to really feel that ground force. You know, try to feel like there's a T underneath your foot, and you're trying to break that T in half to push the hip out of the way. So that's what I'd recommend. That kind of feeling to help you get where you want to go. All right, so Rick B says, I do you at setup, get to the correct distance for each club. I'm not sure what you're asking, Rick. I do you at setup, get to the correct disc. Rick, you want to try re-asking, and I'll hopefully we can get to it. We got about 4 or 5 minutes left, so I'm not really sure exactly what you're asking. So John S says, how do you hit a short side pin location pitch out of a buried lie? Good luck with that. There's no, one, you successfully would be the middle of the green. If you're in a buried lie, you can't really get the club underneath it. You're not going to, if you get it close, it's going to be pure luck. That's really all there is to that. So if you're in a buried lie, what I do is I play the ball a little bit further back in your stance. So normally, if you're kind of short-sighted, you're going to need to get the club, you're going to need to get it up in the air. So opening the face a little bit, playing it more in the middle of your stance, letting the club release a little bit to get the club or to get the ball kind of going up in the air so it'll come down and land soft. That's typically what you do from a good lie, right? But if it's buried, what you got to do, play the ball a little bit further back in the stance because you can't get underneath the golf ball. So you got to kind of come down steep. It's almost like when you're coming down into it, like you're sticking the club into the ground. That's kind of the feeling that you want to have when you're doing this. So back in the stance, open the face a little bit so that it can come up out of there. Otherwise, it's going to come out really, really hot. It's still going to come out probably hotter, but opening the face a little bit can hopefully help you to get it up. And then also, we're going to need to swing a little bit harder to get this club to get underneath it, right? We're going to need to swing a little bit harder to make that happen. And we want to also hinge the wrists. So if you hinge the wrists, what that does is that helps you to come down a little bit steeper. So with this shot, where we're in a normal lie, there was maybe a little bit of wrist hinge and then release to get the ball up. But in this one, we're hinging it more and kind of hitting down, right? We're kind of trying to hitting down where the ball is. And hopefully the ball will kind of pop up out of there when you do this. And when you do this, I would aim for the fat part of the green, hope for a 20-footer, and that you can make a long par putt. Or hopefully, it's a birdie. Maybe it's a par 5 and you're short in the buried stuff or something like that. But don't be aggressive with this shot and try to hit it close. If you're short-sighted, because you're just going to probably leave yourself short-sighted again, it's just going to be one of those snowball effects where it's a hole where you should have, just taken bogey, but then it turns into a triple or something like that. All right. So open up the face, play a little bit far back in the stance, open the face. You're going to need to swing aggressively and hinge the wrists and pop that puppy out. Pop that puppy out there and aim for the fat part of the green. And give yourself a chance at getting up and down. Whereas if you're too aggressive with it, you may end up adding strokes that are unnecessary. So James N says 3 wood, 3 wedges are working great. That's pretty much all the clubs. So that sounds good. Essentially seems same swing. Technique applies to all, but I'm not getting the same consistency when applying the technique to the driver. Obviously, a ball toward lead foot and teed up are different, but are there any differences for driver that I need to think about? So basically, with the driver, because it's up on a tee, you're hitting up on it more. Your path is typically going to be a little bit more to the left, if all things equal, right? So if you're swinging on the same arc as you are with the shots that you're hitting off of the turf, the face and path are going to be to the left, right? So you typically need to swing more to the right. You need to shallow it out a little bit more. So swing more to the right, and possibly need to have the face a little bit more open, and you're hitting up on it. So I would just take whatever the miss is, right? So if you can tell me what the miss is, that's going to help me out a lot more to be able to help you. But probably won't have time for it today. But that's really the main thing, is that you're contacting the ball at a different point in the swing, right? So all the other shots, the ball is right here, and this shot, the ball is higher and further forward, right? So there is a difference there. The club's not going to be the same between those, all right? So you have to make this happen here, which is typically going to be more into out, probably a little bit more open because the face is rolling closed a little bit, and an upward strike on the ball. So one more here, and then we got to wrap it up. So Tim D says, should I feel like your weight is moving toward the target on the downswing? Yes. I mean, again, feel is relative, folks. So remember, feel is not real, and feel is relative. So a lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So if you are hanging back in the swing, hitting a lot of chunk shots and things like that, you probably definitely need to feel like your weight is forward, going forward in the downswing to get that better. But if you're someone who's really sliding forward and getting too much, you may not need to feel like that. If you felt like that, you may fall over. You know what I mean? So it's really relative. Not everything's the same for everybody, but in general, yes, the reality of what's going on is your weight should be moving forward in the downswing and in order to get good ball contact. But I don't know if that's really what's happening in your swing. So, but we're wrapping up right there. I'm sorry, folks, if we didn't get real quick. It looks like Gufran says, how do I see old office hours? So real quickly, just to answer that, to see old office hours, just go to the office hours tab and then click office hours highlights. If you scroll down below the office hours highlights, you'll see there'll be a video there there's a playlist where you can go back to all the old office hours and review those if you want to. So again, thanks for everybody for joining me. We're back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.